Impro Theater and the cast and crew of this online performance would like to take this time to honor the indigenous peoples of the ancestral and unceded homelands we each inhabit, and to consider the legacy of colonization and its far-reaching effects. Impro Theater School presents Advanced Shakespeare Workouts performance of Screwball Shakespeare coming up tonight right after Impro Talk at 7 o'clock. This is Shakespeare inspired by classic films like His Girl Friday, directed by Brian Lohman, and there's another performance on Sunday, June 5th at 3:15 p.m. Also on Sunday, June 5th, right before that at 2 p.m., Impro Theater School Conservatory presents romantic comedy, Improvised. It's an improvised take on the classic cinematic genre of rom-com. That is directed by Paul Rogan. Impro Theater School has a raft of new classes coming up, including my class, Declutter Your Improv. That's Tuesdays from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. starting June 14th. This class is all about simplifying, slowing down, and staying present for a clearer and more fulfilling improvising experience. And prerequisites are just some acting and or improv experience. Coming up on June 18th on Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. is Intro to Narrative Improv with Ryan Smith. This is where the Impro story begins in an 8-week introductory workshop where you'll learn the skills to prepare for the entire Impro Theater School core program. And Ryan Smith is a wonderful teacher that you will have a great time with. Physical Core, Core 1 starts on Saturday, June 25th. That is with Maddie Goff, another of Impro Theater's wonderful teachers. Physical Core is the first workshop in the 4 core curriculum workshops, and it is the foundation for all of our narrative improv, and you will have a great time with that one. That is an 8-week class, Saturdays from 10:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m., June 25th to August 13th. And more online classes will be announced soon, so stay tuned. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Impro Talk. I'm your host, Mike Rock. Thank you for joining us today for our guest, Richard Chassler. He is a stand-up comic, an actor, a writer, a director. He's performed alongside with all kinds of amazing comics in the past. Richard Pryor, Bobcat Goldthwait, George Wallace, Rita Rudner. He's currently on tour with Nick Swartzen of Reno 911. And we'll talk about all kinds of things. He studied acting in New York City. He plays the drums. He's a wine connoisseur and a deadhead. We have a lot of things to talk about. Please welcome Richard Chassler. Welcome, Richard.
Mike Rock.
So good to see you. It's been so long since we've seen each other in person.
Yes, it has been a while. The pandemic slows things down. Our careers move around. We move around, and it has been far too long.
Anyway, I know Richard I think we probably first met because of being at the same voiceover agency.
In New York.
Yeah.
We met in New York when we were both living in New York City, and we were repped at the time, Abrams Artist Agency.
Yeah. Which is, now a different company. There's so many changes. It's pretty crazy, which is what business does, which is part of why I'm excited to talk to you, because you've done so many different things. I remember telling a friend of mine in Los Angeles that I was thinking of coming to LA. And I said, but I'm worried because, I do commercials in New York and stuff. And he said, dude, there are so many ways that you're going to find to leverage your talents in Los Angeles that aren't available in other places. That's slightly different now. But you've been, I said in my intro, you've been an actor, you've been a stand-up, you've been a writer, a producer, a director. You find all these different ways to flex, to use a modern term, to flex your talents. Does that come naturally to you, the adaptation, like diversify or die kind of attitude?
Well, it was never the thought process. I never thought like, whoa, if I don't do this, I'm going to sink. So it's got to be sink or swim. For me, it was always just wanting to remain creative, remain active in what I love to do, and that's create art. And So it just sort of was like by default, what's available to me at this time. You know what I mean? The writing was always something I did. That started at a very young age. I studied screenwriting with Richard Walter at UCLA. Acting, you know, I'm a Stella Adler trained actor, but producing, which I don't love to do, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not my favorite thing in the world. Sometimes it's just, you got to produce stuff if you want to get stuff made, you know, and it just sort of, just you have to, so you learn quickly.
Yeah, that is my burden and realization as well. If you want something to happen, sometimes you have to be the person who's doing all the administrative side of it, which is,
yeah. I mean, directing was an interesting one because I never wanted to be a director. You know, as an actor, the stimulation, the intellectual, the brain scratch for me is, you know, being in the conversation. You know what I mean? Why do you think this character is doing that? And then you're having these conversations with the director. Then I started directing theater in my like late 20s, I guess. And I realized that the conversation was the same. You're just sitting on the other side of the table.
yeah.
So directing sort of became interesting to me. When I directed my first film, I realized that, wow, I really like this. I better stay away from it or I'm not going to act anymore.
Yeah, you know, it's the funny thing, because the cliche used to be, I remember growing up and seeing, because I was addicted to watching interview shows with actors or stand-ups or whatever, or musicians, and hearing people say like, oh, well, you know, actors just want to be directors. And I was like, I thought like, is that ego? And then later I came to kind of realize what you realize, which is, no, it's just, you're looking at the same thing, but you're looking at it from sort of a different angle or different view,
right?
How the pieces can fit together. And you really have to, you know, have that decision in your mind. You have to be like, okay, what's the balance between wanting to be like in it, you know, with on that side of the camera versus, you know, wanting to like sort of be on the outside pushing puzzle pieces around. And
right,
that's a bit of a seesaw, I think.
It is. By the way, I love that quote. I think it actually, somebody once said it to me, and it was like, writers want to be actors, actors want to be directors, directors want to be producers, producers want to be executive producers, executive producers want to be studio heads, and studio heads just want to go on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah, and they do.
Yes, they get to. I want to go from acting to studio head.
Yeah, exactly. I want to audition for a show and say like, you know what, you're not right for the role, but could you run the studio for us?
Exactly. While I'm gone in Aruba for 3 weeks. But yeah, no, I agree with you about the directing thing. It really is that you are in the same conversation and you're just looking at it from the other side.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different perspective on exactly the same thing.
Do you think you, when you direct or when you have directed, do you think you've been the kind of director that you did you surprise yourself as to how you found yourself conversing with the actors and stuff, or was it predictable for you?
No, I went in with the attitude that it was my set and you will do what I say now. I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to keep one actor hat on while I was wearing the director hat. I wanted to be sympathetic, you know, to the cause of the actor. And I really wanted the actors to know that I understand that process, you know, so I didn't want to be the kind of director who would, you know, jump up on stage and here, let me show you how to do this. Or, you know what I mean? I always wanted to make sure I respected that domain of the actor.
I mean, because you've probably worked with some of them, but there are definitely directors who are not shy at all about just being like, this is how I want it done. This is how I want the line read. So just do it like that.
But why didn't you hire yourself?
Yes.
You know, why did you hire me? I read for you. I'm doing what I did in the reading. And then it turns into the whole Johnny Bravo, Greg Brady syndrome of, well, you fit the suit.
5 minutes in, he's dropping a Brady Bunch reference.
And half your viewers are going, what's the Brady Bunch? Do we still know?
Are they gathered in a room together, the people that are watching? So in New York, you studied at Stella Adler, as you mentioned, and at HB. You studied with Stella Adler. Am I right about that?
Stella was my teacher. Yeah, I started studying with Stella when I was 20.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and she trained me for about 8 years. Really, I was on and off with her until she died.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, for people who don't know, give us a little thumbnail sketch of Stella Adler's origin story.
Well, Stella came from her family were all theater people. Her parents, Sarah and I can't believe I know all this. Her parents, Sarah and Jacob Adler, were the people who started the Yiddish theater in New York City. Her brother Luther, was he a good actor, man? Luther Adler was. He was, if you take Brando, De Niro, Pacino, Christopher Plummer, you could take the greatest actors of the 20th century, wrap them all into one. They just start scratching the level of Luther Adler's work. And a lot of people don't know who he was, but for the people who are over 50, who watch The Twilight Zone, one of Luther's greatest roles, I think, was in a Twilight Zone where he played the owner of a trinket shop. And it had the broken piece of glass on it with the magic lamp, if you remember.
Yeah.
And he got it was called Three Wishes. And that was Luther Adler. And so Stella came from a theater family, and she started the group theater in New York with Lee Strasberg.
Yeah, that's
and they were training people like Ilya Kazan, and Brando, and all these people were with them. And then in 1946, I believe, Stella left and went to Paris to study with Stanislavski after Konstantin Stanislavski took the Moscow Arts Theater out of Russia during World War II and went to Paris. So Stella went to Paris to study with Strasberg for 3 years. She comes back in, I think, 1949.
With Stanislavski.
With Stanislavski, I mean, right. So she goes to Paris to study with Stanislavski. She comes back, and Strasberg had kept the group theater going.
Yeah.
So she comes back in 49 and walks in and goes, "We're doing it all wrong."
Yeah.
And Lee's like, "What do you mean we're doing it all wrong?" And she explained, it's work from the outside in, not the inside out. There's no lying. And he refused to make any changes. So that was the split in the group theater. And some actors stayed with Strasberg and some actors left and went with Stella, which is where you get the two schools of method acting thought, and I was with Strasberg, actually. I studied with Susan Strasberg for a little while before I went to Stella, and it didn't work for me. And when I got to Stella, it was like, oh, this fits. It was just honest and real. And if you're supposed to cry in the scene and you can't cry, don't cry. Don't pretend like you're crying. Exactly. And there was no such thing as what Lee Strasberg was calling sensory recall. Not sense memory, that's a different thing, but sensory recall, meaning if you're in a scene and you have to cry during the scene, go back to a place in your life where your dog died and use that emotion to fuel where you're at. But that didn't exist. Stanislavski was like, no, then you take yourself out of the moment. You're no longer present in the moment. So that was the thing with Stella, was like, the truth is the art. It's not, you can't lie your way through it. And that made perfect sense to me. So, that's a little bit of the history of Stella.
It makes sense. I mean, it's just like, I also might be biased because I have had a couple acting teachers who said that very thing. They said, like, if you're looking at me and we're 6 inches away from each other in a really intense scene, and I'm going to be able to see your eyes disappear from the
totally go back. When Fluffy died, I remember I was getting off the camp bus. And my mom didn't want to tell me. She was standing outside, but I could tell she was upset. Like, how could you have that conversation with yourself? Well, you're supposed to be presencing yourself in a really heavy scene with another actor who's counting on you to be reacting to what they're giving you.
For people who aren't actors, they might not quite get, but like, you are either energetically and physically present, or you are absent. And if you are absent, it could still work, because if it's particularly if it's scripted, it could still, you can still fool people, but the other actors know. Everybody in your play or whatever it is that's happening in your scene knows if you are faking it.
Correct. I equate it with my metaphor is it's the difference between hitting a tennis ball across the net with another player or hitting the tennis ball against a wall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The ball will still come back. It just won't.
Yeah, but it comes back totally disingenuously. There's no spin. There's nothing to work off of. You're not chasing it. It's just there. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. There's a book, there's a fairly new book in the last year or so. Isaac Butler wrote a book called The Method, which talks about this, that talks about the split and the history and et cetera. So I only know a few people. I mean, there are only a few people who I know who I know studied with Stella Adler. I'm sure there are more. I'm sure I know more people who did, but I just don't know that they did. Can you talk a little bit about the I don't know, the rigor of being so young and being with someone who who was famous and renowned?
She was the American theater, as far as I'm concerned. I started everything very young for some reason. I started playing drums when I was like just turned 7. I was like still 6.5. I mean, I knew at that age I wanted to be an actor. I was 19, I think, when I went to Strasbourg. I was 20 when I got to Stella's. And, it was weird because Stella would say things like, Mr. Odets and I would have lunch and discuss it. And you're like, what? What is this person? You're doing Golden Boy. And she's like, Mr. Odets' intention in this scene was, or Tennessee and I were very good friends. So trust me when I tell you, when you want to do Brick and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Tennessee's, I'm like, Tennessee, not Mr. Williams? No, Tennessee, we were very good friends. Like, so you're kind of getting everything firsthand. There's no delineation of information. And, it was heavy duty, to be honest with you. She was a strictly no BS kind of person. If class started at 1 p.m. and you were walking in at 1:01, you weren't getting in, the door was locked. She would lock the door at 1 o'clock. And she said, look, this isn't public school. You don't have to be here. Why would you be late to a place you love so much and are paying your own money to be at? You should want to be here an hour early. Like, I don't understand people who just barely show up and make it to class. So no, you're not getting in. Like, she was really a stickler about loving it and owning it and really making sure that you understood that the craft, being able to execute the craft, was as great a privilege as being able to get up onto the platform. She never called it a stage. She always referred to it as the platform.
I love that.
And she said it's a privilege as an artist to be able to stand on that platform. She elevated everything to the universal level. Everything. There was nothing trite with her at all.
Do you remember any particular like positive or negative moment that you were witness to or experienced in class? Or too many?
The very first time I ever worked for her, the first time I ever did a scene from her was from a play by Peter Schaffer called Five Finger Exercise. And my character walks in from outside and it's winter time. And he walks in, and I'm not kidding you, Mike, I made an entrance from upstage. I was upstage right is where the door was, and I entered, and I literally walked in, and I didn't even get a line, not a word. Stella goes, stop. Wow. Mr. Chassler, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, what? She goes, where is he coming from? I said, well, he's coming in from outside. And it's winter. Yes, you don't seem cold. Well, I was like, no, where's the affectation? Where's the affectation? Turn around, cover the entrance, do it again. I hadn't spoken one word. Well, I was a little screwed when I got to Stella Adler because my cousin is, for people who know Broadway, is Louis J. Stadlin. And Louis is a big-time Broadway actor. He's done everything, starred in every play. He's been nominated for 2 Tonys. He's done 8 plays now, I think, with Nathan Lane. More Neil Simon than I think anybody. I mean, he's done so much, my cousin. And he was in LA doing The Odd Couple with Sally Struthers and Rita Moreno when Neil Simon rewrote it and flipped it for women. And it was Sally Struthers and Rita Moreno played the Felix and Oscar characters, renamed, of course. And my cousin Lou Stadlin and Tony Shalhoub played the Pigeon Sisters, who he rewrote as the Costa-Suela brothers. And so Louis came to see me in a play when he was here, and he looked at me and he goes, "You used to be so good. What the hell happened to you?" And I said, "Well, I'm at Strasbourg." He goes, "That's the problem." And we were at IHOP on Sunset Boulevard across from Hollywood High School. And after class, he went outside to the payphone. And called Stella at her apartment in New York and said, "I need you to train my cousin." And he said, "Have him go to the conservatory in LA. I'll call there right now. And I'll tell the director that she should be expecting you." When we got there, they had like rolled out the red carpet for my cousin, like trumpets. Insane. So, you know, that's how I started studying with Stella. And I was 20 and I was a kid. And she told me at a young age, "You're going to have a hard time. You have to be very patient because you're too smart for your age and people aren't going to know what to do with you. Like you look so young, but then you open your mouth and you sound like a 30-year-old. She goes, "So you're going to have to grow and catch up to yourself. So just be patient." And she was right. I didn't work for a long time.
Dang.
Yeah.
Did when you were growing up, did other people give you that kind of feedback? Did teachers say to you like you're too big for your britches or whatever, you know, they would say?
I wish I had. I had a high school drama teacher who actually introduced me to the method, but I got cast in leads, and so I never really felt like. I mean, I was big man on campus. I admit it. You know, I mean, I don't like to, but I was a little bit favored, and so I never really got that sort of honest slashing.
Yeah.
You know.
The tough love speech or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you go to high school in Long Island?
No, I went to high school here. My family moved from New York while I was still in junior high. So I would finish junior high here and went to high school here at the illustrious Van Nuys High School.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Where Robert Redford went and Marilyn Monroe.
Nice. Was it weird being a New York kid in Los Angeles when you were 12, 13 or whatever?
Yeah, I was a spectacle.
Were you?
Yeah, they could have just taken me, put me on a pedestal and put a glass box around me and had me just stand there like this. I mean, I was like, from day one, these kids would be like, "Say talk, say walk, say water." But I got popular quickly, so I made a lot of friends. But yeah, I was a bit of a spectacle. And then I grew my hair long and started skateboarding and surfing, and I kind of just like fit in.
Oh man, I need to see a picture of you with long hair. That's great. So you're in. Are you looking for a picture?
I'm sure there might have been one on the table.
So you're in LA, and did you move back to New York for a period of time? And what was the impetus for that?
I've been back and forth to New York a few times, and it was always because I wanted to do theater. And LA theater was always sketchy at best, especially in the 80s, you know, and I wanted to study. I love the energy in New York City, you know, and it's just, it feels like to me, New York City is just made of art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was a big attraction to me. And I had friends in New York and I had friends living in the city. And so I went back a few times. When I met you, that was the last time I had moved back.
Yeah.
That was 2001, right after 9/11, I had moved back, like a month after 9/11. And that was really right about the time I met you.
Yeah.
And the impetus for that move was really clear. I was on the road doing stand-up. I was working 35 weeks, at least a year, 40 at times, you know, just on the road. And I couldn't act, and I couldn't, agents kept dropping me because I wasn't around to send out, you know. And I wanted to do some more theater, and I wanted to be on Law and Order.
It's for anybody who doesn't know, it's sort of a New York actor's rite of passage to appear on Law and Order. It's you know, someone says, oh, you're a New York actor, what episode of Law and Order are you on?
Exactly. If you didn't do Law and Order while you were living in New York, you either just didn't know how to like leave your apartment, or you just sucked. Because I mean, everyone got an episode or two of Law and Order, you know. And that was really, I wanted to do Law and Order. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, at some point, I want to talk about the different strata in the comedy world, in the stand-up comedy world. But before we get to that, I just, so you get back to New York, you come off the road. Did you immediately start going to club? I mean, this is what stand-ups do. Did you immediately start going to clubs and saying like, how can I get on, you know, get 5 minutes or whatever?
Well, I was already going to New York working at comedy clubs. I got passed at the Comic Strip on the Upper East Side when I was 21 or 22. And I would come into New York sometimes for a week or two at a pop, stay at my friend's house and go work at Catch a Rising Star when that was open, and the Comic Strip and the Good Times on 33rd and 2nd. And, you know, I would just go to New York to do stand-up. And I just always knew at some point I was moving back. And I had gone back once for 6 months, once for like almost a year. But that particular time when I moved back in 01, I was there for almost 5 years.
So that must have felt like, a lot of actors don't have that. Like you say, oh, I'm going to go to LA, or I'm going to go to New York and study acting, or I'm going to audition or whatever. A lot of actors don't have the thing like, oh, and also I'll just go to the comedy clubs that already know me and will put me, like, that got to have been a pretty good thing.
Yeah, I think I was too young to understand how to appreciate it.
Mm.
But yeah, it was really fun to be able to go to New York and do that. And then I would hang out with my cousin, and he would be doing a play, and I would go sit in the, you know, the director's booth or the lighting booth and watch the plays. And, you know, then we'd go hang out. And to me, it was just what you did, you know, but apparently it was just what I did, you know?
Yeah.
Not to sound entitled or weird or anything like that.
No. I mean, it's just your experience.
It was just my experience.
No, I don't want to get too insider baseball, but for just 1 second, who was the guy that ran Kerry something, who ran Stand Up New York? Is it
Kerry Hoffman?
And was he a Frank Sinatra impersonator?
I think so. He did Sinatra. Like, he'd walk around the club like, fly me to the moon.
I think.
You know, but Kerry Hoffman was the guy who ran Stand Up New York.
Right.
Yeah.
My group was sort of like adjacent the stand-up scene because of the boom in the 90s of alt comedy, and we were one of those sketch comedy groups that was kind of up and around, and so we got on bills with stand-ups a lot. And it was so funny how some stand-ups were like, could kind of take it or leave it, you know, that this group of guys run around like they were on Sesame Street or something,
right?
And other people were aggressively like, what are you doing? We're stand-ups. We have an integrity. We write our jokes. You guys are just running around being ridiculous. And then other people became our friends. You know, it was such a weird mix to be a group of guys who did comedy together, and in and around stand-ups at all levels of jadedness.
Right.
But I wanted to ask you about, I've always been fascinated by stand-up. I have paperback book that I probably ordered on the back of like Dynamite magazine or something.
Dynamite.
Or a comic book or something. It was a book of stand-up, of transcribed stand-up routines from like George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Elaine Boozler, a few other people that I remember buying or asking for when I was about 9 or 10 or something. And I've been fascinated with stand-ups. I thought I might become a stand-up until acting and improv and sketch comedy got me. But can you talk a little bit about the journey of a stand-up from like going to open mics, then becoming like a person who like gets in their crappy car and has to drive to college campuses or across the country, and all the different sort of strata? I know the term road dog was a term I used to hear all the time.
I was a road dog.
So,
I was a road dog.
Talk a little bit about that journey that stand-ups have to go through.
It's changed a little bit now. The internet and followers have sort of changed the paradigm a little bit. The business isn't quite the same as it was, but for really up until about 15 years ago, you had to do open mics, and you had to build. You had to get 15 minutes worth of really good, solid material so you could become what's called the opening act, or the host, the MC. And you would really host the show. You'd be the first guy to go on, and you work the crowd a little bit, and you do 15 minutes, and then you'd introduce the middle act or the feature act. He would do 30, and then you come back on stage and introduce the headliner. And you were an opening act, period, until you had written and worked out 15 more minutes of material. Now, to give you an idea of a timeline, if you're doing it right, and you're going to 4 open mics a week, 5 open mics a week, and you're really working the material out, and I mean really working it out the right way, and changing and augmenting and learning and asking headliners questions and really working it out, it could take you a year and a half to build that 15 minutes. Easy.
Wow.
Easy. Yeah. So you need another, really 2 years, you need another 15. So now you're going to be a host for another 2 years, year and a half, 2 years. So now you're 4 years in before you even graduate to becoming a feature act. And that only happened when the club owners you were working for would tell you, hey, look, you've gotten really funny. We see you here 2 to 3 times a year. You know, the feature acts are, you know, we think you should be featuring. We don't think you should be hosting anymore. So will book you back to feature. And then you were a middle act, really? 3, 4 years, 5 years, really, until the club owner would then say, look, the headliners are having a hard time following you. Do you have another 15 minutes or 20 minutes so you can do 45 to 50?
Wow. Not
because there was a meme and you put a show in a bar and you put a thing on there and wrote headliner, Rich Chassler. Didn't work like that. Are you joking me? Like, I was working with guys when I started. I was seeing Seinfeld and Jay Leno and Bill Maher. And this is like I started in 1986, February of 1986. So by the time I was on the road was 1988, really. September, I would say I started going on the road probably January, February of 1988. And at that time, first of all, there weren't as many comedians as there were today. There were not as many comedy clubs as there were today, but Elaine Boozler and Jerry Seinfeld and Richard Pryor and Bill Maher, and like these guys were the guys. And then there were all these guys on the road you never heard of. But they were all doing it for a long time. Before I even met them, they had been doing it since 1978, 79, 80. They're talking about, you know, the big strike of 1978. And You know, and you really only worked in New York or LA. That's where these people mostly came from. Some came out of Chicago, but it was really New York and LA mostly. Gilbert Gottfried. I mean, you know, these were the comedians who were headliners.
Yeah.
And so you wanted to be that good. You aspired to be that funny. So you would just keep working and working and working and working, you know, and you'd ask questions after the show and you'd sit around and they would give you advice. First time I ever worked with George Wallace, he pulled me aside. He's like, youngster, let me tell you something about that bit you're doing, about the thing with the snorkel and you got to change these words around, man. The punchline is this, not that, you know, and you would learn these mechanics of joke writing. Because joke writing is like a golf swing. There's like 100 moving parts in a joke. You know, it's not just, you know, two Jews walk into a bar, they buy it. You know, I mean, and you need to learn this stuff. And so back then you really paid dues. And you did it by getting in the car and driving all over the Midwest in all kinds of crappy weather, in all kinds of crappy cars, schlepping the headliner around. And learning and working, doing 7, 8, 9 shows a week. One, you know, it was not easy.
There's something that I used to hear about that has been covered, I'm sure, in some of the comedy documentaries that have come out in the last several years. But the relationship between the host person, the middle act person, and the headliner, when people are in the green room, like I know that there are stories of like a headliner saying, like, you can't do that. I know you have a joke about buying carrots at the grocery store. You can't do that because I have a joke that's
I have a joke about buying carrots at the grocery store.
Right. And stuff like claiming that the middle act was too funny or not funny enough and put the audience to sleep and didn't do a favor to the head. So were those politics or whatever you want to call it, was that as prominent as the impression I have?
100%. I had a headliner once ask me not to do my closer for the rest of the week because it was too funny. Literally, he said that to me. Hey man, you know that Star Trek thing you're doing at the end? Could you not do that? I was like, what? You're supposed to be able to follow anything. You're the headliner. Yeah. Or they'd lie. Guys would lie. They'd be like, hey, you know that thing you're doing about buying carrots at the grocery store? Yeah, I've got a thing about buying carrots at the grocery store. But you're 3 shows in for the week and you haven't heard anything about that guy doing buying carrots at the grocery store.
And they just stole the joke.
No, he's got this bit about buying carrots at the grocery store.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that happened, sure.
And then there's the story about like headliners, once they started making some money, like buying jokes on the spot, just like saying to a person back in the green room, like pulling out a wad of cash and saying, I'll give you this money if you give me that joke and not tell it again.
That was the first time I ever met Robin Williams.
Did he buy a joke from you or did you see it happen?
He wanted to buy, I had just started, I was maybe a year in, and I was working in the belly room at the Comedy Store. I did a set in the belly room. It's like a Wednesday or Thursday night. And I was coming down the stairs and I'm like, holy shit, that's Robin Williams. And he's coming up the stairs. Now, Robin, as brilliant as he was, Robin had a reputation. And there's people who wouldn't go on if Robin were in the room. So I hate to say that, but
well, you know, on Comic Relief, he and Billy Crystal and Whoopi Goldberg are on stage with Milton Berle, right? And he says, "You're Milton Berle," and then Robin Williams says something like, "I'm Robin," and he says, "Yeah, Robin jokes."
Right. So I'm coming down the stairs to the Comedy Store, and Robin Williams is like, "Oh, hello. You know that thing you did? I'm Robin, and you know that the joke you did about the snorkel, and you called it back, and the thing." He goes, "I'd like to buy that." Oh, he goes, "Can I buy that from you?" And I was like, "What? Can I buy that from you?" And I'm like, "No, the only thing I have that's funny." No, it's the only thing I had. I got my ass on this. I'm not kidding. I was like a year in. I'm still trying to wring out how to make this thing work. See, I sucked when I started because I was an actor and I was training to be an actor. So I was going on stage acting like a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
How are you guys doing? You know, I didn't know how to drive that car yet. And I knew I had one thing that was funny, and it got laughs consistently. And Robin wanted to buy it from me. And I was like, no, I can't sell that. That's the only thing I have that gets laughs. She goes, come on, man, it's really funny. I'd like to buy it. And back then you could buy a regular setup and a punchline joke for $50. And in 35 years, that price has not gone up. The price of a setup and punchline is $50. And he takes a checkbook out of his pocket. He's like, come on, I'll write you a check. Let me have that bid. Come on, I'll write you a check. And I was like, no, please, no, don't make me sell this to you. I don't know how to say no to you. I don't even know you, but I want to know you. But this is all I have that gets laughs. And he said to me, just take the check because I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Wow.
Yeah, you could buy jokes from people. Happen definitely.
How come there isn't, and maybe this has happened and I'm just not aware of it, but how come there isn't a stand-up whose act is talking about that kind of stuff? Would that just be suicide in a club to say, yeah, I was going to do my joke about such and such, but so-and-so stole it? No, you can't do that.
Yeah. Are you joking? You can't call out comics for that. You'd be a pariah. You'd never get work. Nobody would want to work with you. That's like that's like going to the Hollywood orgy and then writing about who was there.
Yeah.
Just the way it is. But, if someone steals your joke, really the thing was that there used to be an edict. Until you do it on TV.
Oh, shoot. It's fair game.
Well, not so much fair game, but look, if you're doing it on Carson, or if you did it on Letterman, or Merv, or if you did the joke on TV, then it's yours. Nobody can go ahead and take that joke. You've done it on TV, But now that doesn't play so much anymore. Carson isn't around.
Yeah.
Letterman's not around. People barely watch late night. They used to tune into late night for the comedians. Oh, David Brenner's on Carson tonight. Gotta watch David Brenner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that doesn't really play so much anymore. And there's the internet, and I'm always careful about what I post on my socials in terms of lines out of my act or jokes that I had just written, because people can lift them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the fact that social media created this world where people just repost stuff and don't say where they got it from. Like there's I'm not going to say who, but there's a person who, when Twitter first started, there was a person who's a known entertainment industry professional who was reposting Conan O'Brien jokes.
Yeah.
Without any attribution.
Yes. Story. Conan, and then go post Conan lines, and people thought they were his.
Unbelievable.
Yes, I know that story.
So I know you were friends with Mitch Hedberg. Can you talk about Mitch a little bit? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay. I actually am in the middle right now of doing an interview for a documentary they're making about Mitch. The director actually messaged me this morning. He's going to be in LA later this month. I don't even know where to start with Mitch. We were such good friends, and we met at a time where Mitch's act hadn't quite developed yet. He was just finding that voice of his, and I just knew he was going to be funny. I just knew. I mean, we met in Colorado doing a comedy competition, and there were 15 people in this competition, and they drove you around every day for 2 weeks to different venues where we would perform, and then you'd get judged. And it was run by this woman named Judy Brown, who is now Judy Marmel, who manages big talent, Sebastian Maniscalco, people like Taylor Tomlinson, and so there were 15 comedians, and Mitch and I met at the airport when we had both arrived, and we became inseparable for those 2 weeks. And every night I would get off stage and Mitch would say, man, you are the funniest guy in this thing. And every night Mitch would get off stage, I'd be like, Mitch, you are the funniest guy in this thing. And I'm not lying. Every night Mitch and I finished 14th and 15th.
Oh my gosh.
I was far too brash for Colorado. Mitch was just Mitch, and they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And I would stand in the back room and I go, man, this guy is going to be so huge. And I don't know, being friends with Mitch or working with Mitch were two totally different things. But Mitch was a stickler for joke mechanics. And we would sit around and tear jokes down and figure out why they weren't working. And he loved the art form. And he was a sneaky mother. I used to play in a band when I wasn't on the road, and I would tell Mitch, hey man, I'm doing a show. And he would come to the show, watch it, and leave. And I wouldn't see him. And then the next day I'd call him on the phone. I'd be like, dude, you didn't show up last night. He goes, man, I was there. You were wearing this, 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 and this. Like he would just like duck in and duck out. You know, he was kind of a ghost that way.
The Irish goodbye kind of thing.
Yes.
I just loved his kind of humor, like the absurdity and the one-liners that you wouldn't get until he'd finished saying it, and then you'd be like, oh my God, like, that's so genius.
I know. He really left it. The thing with Mitch, if you listen to his material, Mitch's entire setup and 95% of the punchline culminated virtually in the last word.
Yeah.
Infestation, stairs, flap. You know, I mean, it just, it was brilliant the way he wrote. And he wouldn't let you write for him. He wouldn't take jokes from other people. Although we were on the road once and I was on the plane going to meet him in Miami. I think we were in Miami. I want to say Miami. I don't know, maybe the islands, maybe some Grand Cayman. I don't remember. But I wrote a joke that wasn't right for me. A really funny joke. And I just knew there was no way I was going to be able to make this joke funny, but it was so Hedberg that when I got there, I'm like, man, I wrote a joke and you got to do the joke. Man, Chassler. He always started everything else. Man, Chassler. You know, I'm not going to do that joke. And I'm like, dude, I can't do it. It's not me. And there's no way I'm going to make it funny. He was like, you do it tonight. If it doesn't get a laugh, I will then take the joke and do it. So I went on stage. I did the joke. It ate it. It just laid there. Crickets, man. Crickets. And after the show, we're back at the condo, the hotel thing where they put us up on the beach. Oh, yeah, I think we were in Grand Cayman. And Mitch was like, man, that joke you did, that's a funny joke. But it's not right for you. You're right. So Mitch went on stage the next night and did it, and the joke killed. And he did it for the whole 2 weeks we were down there. And the last night after the last show, he hands me a piece of paper. And I unfold it, and it had the joke written on it. And I'm like, what's this? He goes, I'm giving you back the joke.
Oh.
I told you I was only going to do it here. And the joke was, notice how I saved the joke for last.
I love it.
The joke was, if you ever get caught going through an airport with LSD in your briefcase, you can always say you're going on a business trip.
It's a good joke.
I couldn't make it funny. It was just not my style. But Mitch went on stage and did it, and it killed.
Yeah, it seems like it's in his voice.
Cadence and everything, yeah.
Oh man. Well, I know it's been a minute, but it's just I just like hearing about people that were cool and that were funny and
was the best. He was the most generous, totally one of the coolest people I ever knew. We spent almost a little over 4.5 years touring together. When Mitch hit, he's like, man, you got to do this show with me. I did it. And we just started doing shows together. And I worked with Mitch for a long time.
Oh, that's cool.
And he gave me room to grow, and he let me be me. And we would work on jokes during the day and, just hang out and smoke pot and talk about jokes.
Yeah. Ah, geez. Well, thank you for for taking us on that business trip with Mitch. That was nice. So you've been a drummer since you were a little kid. Were there, when you were little, were there rock and roll drummers or jazz drummers that you wanted to be, that you thought were the coolest and you were emulating?
First of all, I wanted to be Peter Criss.
Oh, really?
Oh, I wanted to be Peter Criss. I wanted to be Peter Criss.
Drummer for kids, ladies and gentlemen.
And I wanted to be Ringo Starr.
Nice.
And absolutely. I wanted to be Chris Partridge.
Oh. Drummer for television's The Partridge Family.
I mean, I started getting records when I was really young. My drum teacher would bring me like Billy Cobham, and he would bring me Chick Corea, and he introduced me to Buddy Rich.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to be Buddy Rich until the day I met him.
You met Buddy Rich?
I met Buddy Rich.
Holy moly.
I have an autographed record by Buddy Rich in my collection.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it wasn't a fun experience. My drum teacher, Buddy was on Long Island. My drum teacher knew him because he was the jazz drummer at the Sans Souci in New York City. So he picks me up, takes me in his Mustang to go meet Buddy Rich. And I brought a Buddy Rich big band album with me. And we go meet him in the lobby of this. To be honest, I can't remember if it was like a fancy restaurant or a hotel. But I remember there was like a fountain and like burgundy carpeting. That I remember, but I don't remember where we were. And I was maybe 9 years old, maybe. And I just, oh my God, Buddy Rich. And you'd watch Buddy Rich on Clarkson and he'd play, it's Buddy Rich.
Yeah. And
I met Buddy Rich and I said, geez, Mr. Rich, in my 9-year-old voice, you're the greatest drummer ever. I listened to all your records. I watch you on TV and my parents let me stay up late. Like I really laid it on thick. And I just said, you're the greatest drummer. I can't believe I'm meeting you. It's just so fantastic. You really are amazing. And he looks at me and he goes, come on, kid, tell me something I don't know.
Oh, dude.
And my drum teacher looked at him and he goes, Buddy, doesn't matter if he's a kid. He goes, doesn't matter if he's a kid or not. He should say something smart.
Wow. That's sort of the precursor to then hearing how he talked to his band on the tapes.
On the bus?
Yeah, the bus tapes.
Yeah.
But like, so what kind of bands did you play in or have you played in?
Oh, sure. I played in several bands. I played in my first band in 7th grade. A couple kids and I got together and we would play in my living room. We had no bass player. 2 guys played guitar and me. And we would play like AC/DC and Kiss and some Zeppelin as best as we could, you know. And then in high school, I played in a band that had original music. We were called the New Edwardians. And we would play like clubs around LA on Lancashire, HJ's Rock and Roll Orphanage, FM station. I played at the Troubadour once on Santa Monica Boulevard. We played at all these different clubs and we had original music and we covered like some Who and a few Beatles, you know.
Just enough to be tasteful.
Oh yeah. But it, like Summertime Blues, but the Who's version, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I played in a couple of Grateful Dead bands and I toured with one, a real Grateful Dead tribute band, where I got to play the Mickey Hart role. And we were selling like 1,000 tickets a show. We played only theaters and I would do this in my downtime from stand-up. And yeah, I still play.
For people who don't know, the Grateful Dead toured with Bill Kreutzmann and Mickey Hart, 2 drummers. So
right.
That's why Richard is making the delineation between the two.
And Kreutzmann was a real jazz drummer, like his chops were all jazz, and Mickey was playing world music and a lot of heavy color and toms and syncopated rhythms within the 4/4, 6/4, 10/4, you know, signatures that the Dead would play in, and it was really fun, really fun.
Did you go to a lot of Dead shows?
You know, I've been, I don't know, you know, about 400 something, so.
I think I asked you that way early on when we had met and somehow the Dead came up.
I was wearing a Grateful Dead t-shirt. I'll never forget it. We were at Abrams waiting to go in and read. We were both in the waiting room outside in New York and I was wearing a Grateful Dead shirt. and you were asking me about the Grateful Dead. Do you really like Grateful Dead, or do you just wear the shirt? Was the actual question you asked me. And we started talking about it, and I told you then, I used to book my stand-up comedy tours around Grateful Dead tour. So I could be on the road doing stand-up, making crap money. I would go see the Grateful Dead and sell stuff in the parking lots to supplement my shitty comedy money at the time.
I should say that Richard and I experienced a weird moment of connectedness when I was in a grocery. I don't remember what store. I was in some grocery store. No, I was in a car dealership, and in Santa Monica, and heard they were playing. They were playing like a probably Sirius XM Dead station or something like that, and a song. Shoot, now it's escaping me, but a song came on, and I was like, "Oh, this is the Dead," obviously from a released bootleg tape, and I quickly looked it up to make sure I was hearing it right, and I texted Richard, said, "Hey, I thought about you today. I'm in the Subaru dealership, and I heard." Whatever it was, I know you ride, or I don't know what it was, but it was from such and such. And Richard wrote back like, "That's on my license plate on my car."
Yeah, that's totally true. It was on my license plate frame.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. It might have been Scarlet Begonias.
Yeah,
because I think at one time I had a license plate frame that had that around it. Now my license plate frame says, "Listen to 5877."
Oh,
that's all it says. If you know, you know.
Yeah. So people who are Deadheads talk about Dead shows by the date and or the show number at a particular event, like Winterland, third show
Right.
from December of 1976 or whatever like that, and people will know. They'll be looking at each other like, "Oh yeah. And some people are like, "I was there," and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's an interesting segue in your personal life that you talk about in your stand-up, but that you go from it's not necessarily a transition, but that like parallel in your life is Deadhead and wine connoisseur. How did that? I mean, it's part of your act, so I'm not asking you to reveal part of your act, but how does it happen that this New York kid who grew up in LA and does stand up and listens to the Grateful Dead becomes a wine guy? Like, how does that happen?
When I moved back to New York in 01 is really when it happened. Remember where Abrams' office was on 25th and 7th Avenue?
Yeah.
Now I lived on 14th and 7th Avenue. So I would walk up all the time. And there was a wine store on 7th Avenue and like 17th Street. And there was this old man who used to have like a recliner, and he would sleep in the back, and he had a couple of guys working for him. And I remember I was walking home one night and I didn't feel like buying beer. So I walked into the wine shop and I bought a white Cote de Rhone, and it was about $10, $9.99 for the bottle. And I had no idea what I was buying, but I tasted it. I was like, wow, this is good. So I'm back and I bought that wine a few times. And I got a job. When I moved to New York, I wanted to get off the road. And so I got a job at a restaurant in New York City, in Soho. And the chef gave me a bottle of Bordeaux one night because the owner had stolen a tip from the staff. And so he gave me a bottle of Bordeaux and then opened the same bottle. And I still have the bottle he gave me in my cellar. And that was the first time I ever had wine that made me go, oh, wow. Huh?
There's something going on here.
And I started going to tastings, and I just started paying a little bit of attention. And I moved back from New York. When I moved back in 05, I think I came back with like a case, maybe, or 2 cases of wine that I had amassed while I was living in New York. And my cellar now has about almost 700 bottles.
Dang.
Yeah, I'm insane. I really have no business. And my girlfriend is like, wait, you're not in the wine business? You just buy wine? Like, yeah. So
I know that we can't do a whole wine course right now, but
we can do a part 2 if you want sometime.
But
what do you want?
I'm just curious. So there are different kinds of, obviously the spectrum of wine lovers is a pretty wide spectrum. If you go to let's say you're on the road and you go to a restaurant and they have a pretty limited selection of wine. Are you the kind of wine person who just won't have any wine if they don't have something that works well with the meal? Or are you like, you know what, let's try that. That's fine. I'm not going to be, so strict about it. Do you know what I mean?
Can I say the F word?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So my merch, I do this thing in my current act, and it's going to be on the album I'm recording at the end of the month. Snooty snoot fuckity fuck. Wine people are snooty snoot fuckity fuck. Well, everyone is a snooty snoot fuckity fuck about something. But I could easily just say, I'm not drinking any of this swill. Like, I'll know it or it's garbage. Every now and then I'll just, if that's the case, I'll usually just get like the least offensive white wine on the menu.
Yeah.
It's harder to screw up white wine than red wine. So I just might get something like that if I'm really but yeah, I'm the kind of guy that'll bring wine to the restaurant.
A couple other things quickly though. You were in the film Hitchcock, the Helen Mirren, Anthony Hopkins, Scarlett Johansson, etc.
Right.
And so you play the actor who played Milton Arbogast, the detective in
Right.
Psycho. So tell me about that, like, because I can see how you have kind of a similar facial structure, et cetera. But like, that must have been heady and exciting to not only be cast in a big film, but also be cast as an actor. You know what I mean?
In a biopic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played Martin Balsam.
Yeah.
And I was surprised I got the part because there was a guy in the audition waiting room with me who looked like he was Martin Balsam's kid. And when you're in an audition and you're sitting there and you're looking at something, you go, oh, I'm never going to get this. This guy looks exactly like the guy.
Yeah.
It was a little heady. It was fun. I got to work with Helen Mirren in a scene, which was awesome.
That's cool.
But playing somebody who was alive, like I went and watched Psycho like 3 times before we actually shot, because I wanted to know everything about Arbogast, and I wanted to know, I wanted to watch Martin Balsam's approach to it. It turned out to be a huge waste of time because the director was like, I want you doing you. I don't want an impression of Martin Balsam. I want,
That's back to being truthful in your acting right there.
I had the makeup. The makeup people did a great hairpiece for me, though, like a really great hairpiece for me. And they weren't even sure if they were going to do it. But when I was in the trailer, I went, shouldn't we put a hairpiece on them? And they got all happy because now they got to work longer.
Yeah, that's nice.
But it was fun to be able to do that and to have conversations. They had certain things from the original Psycho set on the set that we were using. So that was one of the best parts about it. To be honest with you, it was the nostalgia.
Yeah. Martin Balsam was such a huge 20th century American actor. Just one of those guys who would turn up in all kinds of places, and you always just bought him. You always just were like, yeah.
And for those who don't know, if you've seen Psycho, Martin Balsam played the detective who went out looking for the Janet Leigh character. And he's the guy that got pushed down the stairs and does the fall as he's going down the stairs, right? And according to history, it was actually Alma Hitchcock who had come up with the rig to do that. They couldn't figure out how to do it. And there's a scene in the movie, one of my few scenes that got left in, where I'm at the top of the stairs arguing with the camera guy, going, why don't you just shove me? Why don't you just push me down the stairs? And Alma comes in, and what they did was they put Martin Balsam on the camera crane. Now, back then, they had these old-fashioned camera cranes with the seat and the movie, and the DP would sit in this thing, and they took the camera and turned it around.
Ah, yes.
Put Martin Balsam in the chair and faced the camera at him, and then moved the crane down the stairs that way.
Oh, that's how they did it.
And they had him in the chair doing this with the camera facing him on the crane. It was really smart.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
But that must have been, yeah, that just seems like it would be super fun to, because I've always loved that guy, and I love that movie obviously as well.
Yeah,
which is cool. And
that
that's
was the best jobs.
Connects you to the group theater because, Balsam studied with, or, worked alongside Elia Kazan and
Right.
et cetera back in the day.
In several,
What's that?
you worked with Kazan in several movies, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. On the waterfront, et cetera.
Right.
So there are people out there thinking like, I want to be a stand-up.
Don't.
I think I can write stories, et cetera. What are your thoughts for if you could go back and talk to your middle school self or your high school self or college or whatever, what advice do you offer to people who are creative types who are trying to think of what they should do next?
Well, stand-up is something I would never advise anybody to do unless you absolutely can't live with yourself. If you're the funniest guy in the office, that is not going to make you a good stand-up comic. Stand-up comedy is an art form unto itself, and it is hard, very hard. Any stand-up comedian who's a veteran will tell you that at a minimum, it'll take you 10 years to get really good at it, at the point where you can own it on stage and you are comfortable and really have this fluidity to it where you don't look green anymore. I mean, 10 years before you get or start to get really good at it. Now, yes, there are exceptions to every rule, but by and large, I sing, I tap dance. We know I play music. I'm a trained actor. I write, and I've written an award-winning film, and I do stand-up comedy. And stand-up comedy is by far the hardest art form of anything that I can proficiently do, to be honest with you. I don't mean to sound, I'm not bragging or anything. I'm just saying that, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And it really, really takes a long time to get good. And even when you think you're good, you're not good yet. You're fooling yourself.
Even when you think you're good, you're not good yet.
You're not. Because 4 years in or 5 years in, you'll have this one-off set where you kill. And who knows why? Maybe you have people in the audience. Maybe you followed someone who was so terrible or so great that the audience was either primed or not primed. But there's a million reasons why. But you might have this great set and go, oh, wow, look, I'm funny now. No, you're not. You're funny when you can do that 300 times in a row from start to finish.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. It's really, really, really hard. So if you're a person who wants to be a creative and you think you have an artistic bone, you got to ask yourself, I always say there's 2 questions you got to ask yourself. Number 1, what is it you enjoy doing the most? What brings you the most sense of pleasure and satisfaction? And what do you feel you're the best at? And if the answer to both those questions is the same, well, then you have an idea of what direction you should go in,
Yeah.
But training as an actor, dancing, cooking, painting, I mean, you got to have some natural ability, I think. I think artists, like athletes, are born with this unearthly ability to transform something. You know what I mean? Athletes just do it with their bodies, and they're just these magical unicorns who can't explain. They're just, go see Hustle, Adam Sandler's new, or on Netflix, watch Hustle, Adam Sandler's new movie, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Like, athletes are just like these mega humans beyond anything. Well, artists, although we have a lot of tentacles and tend to want to do a lot of things, you're born with something. I built my drum set when I was a kid. I was 6.5. I built a drum set. I don't know how I knew my past life. Who knows? Next thing I knew, my mom had a drum teacher at my house 2 weeks later. You know, I think that you're born. I think you're born with a specific set of aptitudes or talents, and refining those is what I think your artistic training is about. You know?
Yeah.
But it's very hard to just one day go, you know, I want to go do this with zero aptitude for it. You know, I think that when you're talking about doing something as elevated as art or as elevated as athletics, I think you kind of need some form of natural ability. That's why when you meet people like, oh no, I don't ever want to be on camera, not my thing. You know, like they're already clear with that. They know it's not their thing.
Yeah.
You know, but I was in theater since first grade. It was never a question for me as to where I liked being the most. Like I couldn't wait to get into that theater and smell those dusty curtains and, you know, that dirty stage in the auditorium, you know, like that to me was a sandbox. It was like my happy place. I'd rather be there than out playing sports with my friends.
That was me.
You know, I just knew that. And I still played sports. My father forced me to get good at sports, but still that was not where I had the most fun.
Absolutely.
It wasn't where I felt at home, and it wasn't where I was relaxed. You know what I mean? There was a sense of place for me in the theater.
Yeah, that it's where you found your flow, and that's how I feel exactly. Yeah. And are you on the road soon with Nick Swartzen again?
Nick and I just did 3 weeks in March and early April, and he's out right now. And the great thing about Nick is he uses several of his friends, and I can't be greedy. I get a lot of work. He doesn't generally take people out for 3 weeks at a time, but we're friends and we hang out. And, you know, so I'm hoping I'm going to get some fall dates with him, you know, but I've also got some stuff coming up in my own books, and I'm going to be recording an album here in LA. I think we're going to call it Boy Out of New York.
Nice.
And I'm hoping to do that. We're literally looking at venues now. So I'm thinking last week of June, first week of July, something around then. We'll be recording that, and that'll be hopefully put out on Sirius.
Oh, cool.
So look for that. Yeah, 800-Pound Gorilla is supposed to be behind me after I make it. So they're hopefully going to get that out on Sirius. So, you know, and I'm starting a podcast, actually. I have to join the revolution. I've put it off long enough. And so that's going to be called the Rich Chassler Podcast. And I'm supposed to get the word today from the sponsor. Hopefully they're going to say yes, and we'll probably be launching that in a couple of weeks.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah. And so other than that, you know, if you want to see what I'm doing, all my social medias are at Rich Chassler. I don't go by Richard professionally. I don't really go by Richard. Richard's an accountant. You know, Richard's a curator at an art museum. You know,
Richard is a wine connoisseur. I'm going to leave that right there. All right. Well, I'll put that up on the screen. People will be seeing that.
Chassler, all my stuff's the same.
Thank you, Rich, for talking to us today, talking to me.
Mike,
sharing it with everybody.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure.
It was a blast. Anytime. Are you kidding? So much fun.
We covered a lot of ground. You could do, and I'm sure you'll do this with your podcast, but you could do entire episodes just about drumming, just about the Grateful Dead, just about, you know, when you are an enthusiast about things, which is a great thing for artists to be, you will find no end of camaraderie with others who are fellow enthusiasts. So take advantage of that, I think.
I'm a life enthusiast, and I really do love life, and I've never been happier in my life or have felt more satisfied or connected to myself. And so I'm really at a very grounded, happy place right now. And as you know, a good partner can do that for you.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I believe finally that's happened in my life. And it helps you look at yourself in a more comprehensive way.
It helps you forgive yourself for things.
I don't have anything to forgive myself for.
And accept things about yourself. It helps you get over yourself, I think, also is another factor.
Yourself, when there's someone there supporting you, it makes it easier for you and your belief systems to have strength. It's like you're not lifting the car by yourself anymore.
Yeah.
There's somebody there who is, helping you lift it, and you're helping them lift theirs, and it becomes this sort of simpatico thing that takes on a different meaning but fuels the bigger picture.
Yeah, well put. Well, congratulations on everything. Looking forward to hearing about the podcast and the live album recording, which is a super cool thing to do. And we'll talk more another time.
I'm looking forward to it, and I can't tell you how happy I am to see you. Seriously,
Mike. It's a pleasure. Same.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Mike.
Everybody go follow Rich and see him. And thank you for watching today or listening. And we'll see you next time.
Take care.